To introduce trustee and co-founder of the American Monetary Institute, Lucienne Dewulf.
Good afternoon. In the name of the trustees, well, myself and Jessie DeGroot, I welcome all of you who came from close and far to participate in this 13th Chicago AMI Monetary Reform Conference dedicated to the celebration of Stephen's work and life. It is with sadness that I greet you as well. As we all expected, Stephen Zallenga, the creator and founder, and the force behind the American Monetary Institute, to be here today. Here I am, the co-founder of AMI, behind Stephen's podium, a stand I have succeeded in avoiding all those years. I'll be brief, the schedule is packed full of extraordinary speakers and activities Stephen would have loved to enjoy. AMI was created with a very clear mission statement and very specific goals in mind. It was created as a charitable trust to remain an independent entity. And as a reminder, before AMI moves on without Stephen at the helm, allow me to read AMI's mission statement crafted in 1996. Beautifully and concisely written, the mission remains as valid today as it was 20 plus years ago. There it is. We are dedicated to advancing the independent study of monetary history, monetary theory, and monetary reform, and to present the results of our research in a manner that's understandable by the average citizen, so that this information would hopefully lead to monetary reforms which assures a greater level of economic justice in society and a more efficient and equitable functioning of government. This mission shows us the path of the future for the American Monetary Institute as the unifying platform for all interest groups, all vying for recognition, power, and funds. AMI has to remain independent in its research and outreach through writing, publishing, teaching, sponsoring and participating in local, regional, national, international conferences, drafting and supporting legal reforms, such as the NEED Act, and to do whatever our imagination takes us towards achieving our goals. Stephen Zallenga, our director and admired leader and friend, with the help, serious help, and financial support of his friends, AMI members, and his families, still, and I insist on still, lived below poverty level to keep AMI alive as a functioning entity. Let us not forget that to continue to exist, to remain alive, AMI as a charitable trust needs to be funded by a growing generous membership, donations, income from publishing and other sources, and grants. May the next few days be enlightening to all of us, and as Stephen would say before a conference, let's learn and have fun.
few years ago, Stephen announced at a conference that if anything happened to him, I was to step in. I was honored, flattered, but I didn't pay any attention because he was 8 years younger than me, so I didn't expect anything like this to happen. I strongly do feel his absence here. He was aging too. We discussed nominating someone younger, but here I am and here we are. We knew that he had a serious condition, but whether out of wishful thinking or natural denial of mortality, we were all a little bit surprised at his passing. So the transition was not as smooth as it could have been, but with help we are here. We intend for the Institute to go on. Stephen Walsh was a big help in getting the materials moved. We moved about 2 tons of files, computers, books, a couple of automobiles, one of which we intended to auction here, but it's not prepared. But you're still free to make an offer on it. It's a Toyota MR2, a classic. But the materials are secure and in reasonable order, and I'm very grateful to Lucienne for her help in sorting things out. Everything is in my residence. Lucienne has a key. Trustees have unlimited access. Jamie Walton is invited to stay there as much as he needs to. Stephen Walsh has volunteered to catalog Stephen Zerlingen's work, and he is invited to do that. Others who want access will need to negotiate for time and space. It's a small house. And again, thanks to Lucienne's assistance and guidance, the administrative affairs of the Institute are in good order. We preserve the email, phone number, and we are flexible. The founding principles of the Institute include morality and scientific method. The summary statement is in your handout folder with elaboration on that. My understanding of morality is that we treat each other with respect and fairness. Our monetary system is the polar opposite. Stephen relied on 800 sources for his book, The Lost Science of Money. I did not keep count of mine, but it must have been at least that many books, articles, and laws over 36 years. To date, no one can explain to me why we as a civilized society must put up with this, why we stand for it. Such an immoral, amoral, unjust system. I consider the late Peter Cook to be a mentor. He had his own little organization called Monetary Science Publishing. When I started out, I didn't have a clue what to do or how to research. I call him a mentor because I learned from him the necessity for the impeccable use of verifiable data. Peter was an engineer. He respected scientific methodology. Stephen Zerlingen was not an engineer or a scientist, but he intuitively recognized the need and included that in the founding principles of the Institute. It will continue. My cliche phrase is real data in real time. But our data is historical and it can't reach the level of repeatable laboratory experiments. However, the evidence is beyond any reasonable doubt to show the immorality of this debt creation of money. The history and statistics, when examined critically, are overwhelming. Not only is it amoral, the creation and lending of credit by private entities is criminal under any common definition of fraud. Proving the fraud legally, however, is different. Most bankers do not know they're committing this fraud, and intent is necessary for conviction of a crime, as we see from this dictionary definition. However, the admission of the creation has come from bankers with high positions. And this has been going on for some time, not just the head of the Bank of England, as recently happened. Nothing shows the immorality of the private credit system better than the financial relationship to war. It screams at you. When you eliminate errant patriotism, chauvinism, exceptionalism, and hubris. War remains a social, economic, political pathology that manifests as psychopathology in world and national leaders. Some of the accomplishments of the Institute are the publication of a variety of papers, the most recent being Stevens and my collaboration, The Nature of Money in the Modern Economy, Implications and Consequences. Stephen and I agree that Alexander Del Mar was the greatest monetary historian, who wrote altogether an encyclopedia of history and science. Stephen's single book, The Lost Science of Money, stands alone as the best single book in all of my experience. It is a remarkable achievement of his and AMI. The bibliography is extensive and is worthwhile the price of the book to any researcher, rookie or veteran. Now, compare Stephen's book to two books that have had a great deal of influence. Adam Smith's Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations and Karl Marx's Capital, where you find no footnotes or bibliography. They are just books of rhetoric. I don't know what I would have thought of The Lost Science of Money had I not done my own research. Because I told Stephen there were additional things in the book for me, but it was not revealing, it was confirming. Getting the American Monetary Act written and introduced in legal form as a NEAT Act by Congressman Dennis Kucinich is perhaps the crowning achievement, but it was not passed into law. It remains a paramount goal of the Institute. Another achievement is organizing and sustaining this conference, 12 of them, gathering the best intellectually talented people. Stephen referred to these accomplishments as miracles. Miracles, or some might say luck. What I have noticed that miracles and luck happens to people who do things. They're present at the right time and place. They do not get lost in blowing ideological, wishful thinking, hypothetical, or make-believe bubbles as Marx and Smith did. They do things. The thing that I saw was Stephen's dedication and dynamism. The first conference, I dubbed him the Energizer Bunny. He was everywhere doing everything. And that's what made it happen. The Institute was his life. 12 years of living like a caveman, someone told me, to produce The Lost Science of Money, crisscrossing the country, working with people like me at the grassroots level, managing the day-to-day administration of the Institute, marketing books. We now have to pick up and carry on. I put a lot of emphasis on law in my research. The written law will not tell you much about the exigent politics, but law is less burdened with personal opinions, prejudices, and ideological baloney, such as Smith and Marx. And that sort of bias does show up in history. I have an ideology. It's the same as the foundation of AMI, morality and scientific method. But of course, I give in wishful thinking too. One of the first things I went looking for was a law that legalized this fractional reserve banking fraud. I couldn't believe it. I've said before, for me, it was an epiphany with cognitive dissonance. Were the claims about banks creating money by this so-called fractional reserve expansion false? What I did find in the legal encyclopedia was a section on banking law that stated some practices of banking had not been encoded into law. It was established by usage and custom. I did not find the law against credit creation either. In general, individual bankers aside, bankers do not do illegal things. They don't break laws. They get laws passed and legalize their theft. Theft is immoral and illegal. Practice is clearly fraudulent. Fraud is illegal. But we have been induced to tolerate it by not seeing it. We have to look. Is that how this immoral system remains in place? Usage and custom has so inured us to the abuse that we don't even see it. Over time, I found multiple publications of the Federal Reserve banking system from as early as 1939 explaining fractional reserve loan expansion. Can we take their word for it? Those publications have mostly vanished from Federal Reserve banks and Board of Governors websites, but AMI has preserved some of them. Modern Money Mechanics, one of them. This is published by a bank here in Chicago. And when I wrote for some more of them in 2002, they sent me back a letter saying that the assumption, it was out of print, and the assumptions, they were using new assumptions. What I remember from Economics 101, mostly in college, was a lecture on assumptions. And I sat there as an engineering student saying, what? We do not make assumptions. Now, some people will tell you the banks never operated this way. The point is that they've been telling us that they were creating the credit all along, and why didn't we listen? Why didn't our predecessors listen? So I recommend that we simply indict them with their own words. Now, engineers make assumptions too, but they test them. And when they don't work out, they don't continue doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. Now, Einstein has been credited with that, originating that statement, but I would hope that humanity didn't wait that long to realize something so obvious. Engineers like Alexander Del Mar, Frederick Soddy, C.H. Douglas have produced some of the best literature. Now, what is an unmitigated false statement is that banks can create 10 times the amount of a deposit when they have a 10% reserve requirement. The 10 times is merely a mathematical abstraction that would require infinite loans, an impossibility. I don't know how many times you've heard that. Banks can create 10 times their reserves. It's not possible. And keep opening this computer. And when I checked in the statistics, they never come anywhere near that. And I do not personally believe that this reserve limitation was ever used as a limitation on creating credit. I think it was just a way of explaining what they were doing. I was born on a farm where I heard the expression, you have to hit a mule between the ears to get its attention. And it took several hits between this mule's ear to get my attention. One was President Nixon's wage and price freeze in 1971. He closed the gold window. I had no idea what a gold window was or why anyone would even want one. I thought the president executed laws, not make them with unilateral edicts. And that was my first awakening to the relationship of corporations and government. A simple definition of that is fascism. Years later, an associate peace activist came to me with a proposal to hold meetings to discuss the perception that we are headed for fascism. And I said, I don't think we are headed for fascism. He demanded to know why. I told him that we were headed for fascism in 1791 when Congress founded the first bank in the United States and put the United States economy on bank credit. And by 1913, we were fully fascist, or worse, with the founding of the Federal Reserve System. It just confused him. He had no idea what I was talking about. I digress from monetary research sometimes into psychology, brain science, and mythology to try to gain some insight into why we are so gullible to those we see as authorities, who in fact are intellectual and moral charlatans, liars. Various sages and writers through history have written things that should warn us. Hitler is someone whom I consider to have been something of an expert at political lying. He took a paragraph in Mein Kampf to explain what it took a father-in-law, only a sentence to explain the mother-in-law. She is so honest, she is naive. And that's our problem. We're too honest. We just simply cannot. I couldn't believe this stuff in the first time. I had to go prove it. But it's played out right in front of us over and over. Look at this last election. What a shamble that thing was. One of the old political tricks of all is divide and conquer. The most successful running division in this society is the left and the right. Democrat and Republican, liberal and conservative. These polarizations result in the absolute impotence of democracy. That is why Stephen Zarlinga founded AMI as an independent research institution. We steer clear of such distractions. Feel-good slogans, cliches, canards, shibboleths, logical fallacies, myths, calumnies, distortions, omissions, distractions, straw men, red herrings, lies, evasion, ideological wishful thinking, magical thinking, make-believe, and much more are the stuff of political misdirection. Even truth can be used against you when it is a half-truth. The media is expert at that. How many people here have read the Federal Reserve Act? Good. For those of you who have not, how can you talk about something you don't know what it is? Founding principle is independent research. Section 16 of the Federal Reserve Act, these said notes shall be obligations of the United States. Somebody tell me what that means.
The U.S. is liable.
So what?
U.S. is liable.
Very good. You understand that? You, we back this bank credit with the resources of the United States and the taxing power of the government. We back their credit. And when you hear somebody say, money's going to be backed by something, gold bugs say this. Our money is backed by the best thing that it can be backed by. It was written in 1913. Is it still true? It is. This is Title 12. You can read the citations. Chapter 3, subchapter 12, section 411. And the gibberish underneath there is other laws that have restated the same thing. Federal Reserve notes are bank debt notes. And the alternate meaning of note in this context is IOU. The notes are not the same as bank deposits that exist only as computer bytes, but the computer bytes are treated as legal tender money in commerce and courts. How do we get suckered into that situation? So where do we go from here? The founding objectives of the American Monetary Institute remain the same: independent research and publication. The ultimate objective is the passage of the NEED Act. To accomplish this, we're going to need effort on all fronts. Stephen Zerling has set a high standard. We need every effort at the grassroots level, the intellectual level, and the political level, and also we want to collaborate with all the other international movements that are out there. What Zerling accomplished was miraculous. It was his life. He was not raising children. He was not working at a job. He was 24/7 AMI, and we can't buy that. We will be doing things like introducing annual membership solicitations, but if we are to go forward with these things, we must increase the budget by an order of magnitude. I'm not kidding. The present flow will be likely, will be doing well to continue at the same level. I would like to continue this level of annual conference. Stephen was pitching it to a high intellectual level deliberately. And the facts are that the attendance has slowly dropped over time. It is not sustaining. Look around you, how many people are here? I like to do smaller scale things all over the country. We must have a presence in Washington, D.C. That's where the NEED Act will be passed. We have to go to work. We have to make it happen.